Hello and welcome. My name is Christina from Empowered Creator. I am a mindset and conscious manifesting teacher and coach, and this is my YouTube channel. Here I talk about all things law of assumption, mindset, conscious manifesting, the quantum universe, and a lot more. And my goal is to simplify everything. So if you guys like this channel, if you like this content and you would like to see more of it, I would love it if you would subscribe and also like this video, comment on it, share it, and just stick around. Also, if you need any particular help with your situation, I offer one-on-one coaching, email coaching, small group coaching, as well as custom subliminals for whatever needs you may have. So if you're interested in any of these services, the links are below in the description box. Click on them and they're going to take you to my website. With all that being said, let's get into today's video. Today I wanted to address a question I get from quite a few people. And the question is, if I feel like I'm doing everything right, and if I am predominantly aligned with my desired state, and if I am predominantly in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and I know that it's mine and I know that it's coming, why is it that I may still not be seeing movement? So I wanted to address that in this video today. And I also wanted to give you guys some motivation and some encouragement and briefly explain why there is always movement and why you should persist in what you want to see manifested in your 3D. So let's dive into it. So if you've been living in the end state for a while, if you've been dwelling in that for a while, if you feel like you're doing everything correctly and you're still not seeing movement, usually this is due to one of three reasons. The first reason, and actually the most common, which many people don't realize, is how consistent have you actually been in living in the end and living in your end state? Most people tend to waver quite a lot between the old story and the new story, and that's very normal. Like I say a lot, we're human, so it's okay. But in order to bring in the new story, in order to bring it in faster, and in order to, let's say, create it faster in the 3D, although we're not exactly creating it, we're actually channeling it from the 4D and bringing it into material form in the 3D, it is essential that we actually stick to our new story, that we don't waver as much as possible, that we don't go back to the old story as much as possible, and that we focus and stick and put all our attention into the new story. So we need to be really, really consistent with that. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. So you may feel like you're doing everything correctly, but you actually might still have a lot of resistance. You might still be wavering quite a bit. You might still be discussing or thinking about the old story a lot. So you are essentially not quite, you're kind of creating the new story. You're kind of bringing it onto the 3D, but not quite. So you want to be persisting more in that. You want to be more consistent and more persistent in the new story that you're creating. And that is, I think, by far the number one reason why people don't get movement, or they don't get movement very fast, because yes, they're still doing a good job, but they might not be consistent enough. So I want you to be aware. I want you to watch your thoughts, your feelings, your dominant state, and have an honest conversation with yourself about how consistent you actually are in the new reality that you're bringing forward. And I actually made a video about a month ago about how long your manifestation is going to take. You might want to go back and watch that too, because that is very related. And in it, I just talk about some of these reasons in more detail. So I would recommend that you watch that video if you haven't. But to go back to reason number 2, as to why you might be doing everything right, but you're not still seeing movement. Another reason might be how long have you persisted in the new desire, in the new desired state, and in your new desired story that you're creating. Because frankly, what a lot of us do, and I know I've done that myself, we feel like we intensely focus on something, we intensely focus on a new state, we are there, we feel like our 100% being there, and then we do that for like a day or two, and then we start wondering, okay, so where is it now? I did it, I did the work, where is it? So It doesn't always work like that, unfortunately. Yes, there are a lot of manifestations that can actually come in pretty fast. They can be instantaneous or they can be very fast, like within hours, within days. That is common, and the more advanced you become, the more common it's going to become for you. But there are still other manifestations that need some time. And if you haven't persisted in your end state, in your desired state for long enough, if you've only persisted for a few days or maybe even a few weeks, you might just need to persist longer. It might be as simple as that. You haven't seen it yet, you're not doing anything wrong, but it still needs time to show up in the 3D, so you need to persist longer. So one other reason why you might not be seeing movement yet is that you just haven't persisted yet for long enough. And the third reason, that has more to do with how the 3D reality is structured, how the 3D world works, and how this material world works that we all live in, is that matter is actually quite dense and quite slow moving. So the 3D is actually quite slow moving. We actually have the illusion that nothing ever changes, even though every single moment that passes is actually a change from the previous state of things. But we don't see that, we don't realize that, we don't perceive it this way. We perceive time in a very linear way, which is actually also an illusion. So we have the illusion that nothing ever changes, even though it is changing, but it's just changing so slowly because it's so dense, because matter is dense and the material world is dense, that we just don't perceive it as changing, even though it is changing, even though the changes can be so subtle that we cannot possibly perceive them with our finite human mind. So this is why it's so important to persist in what we want, in the new reality that we want, even if we're not feeling like we're seeing change. We need to persist because change can be slow to come in human terms. Now, change is always instantaneous and movement is always instantaneous in the 4D. We close our eyes, we imagine something, we think about something, and it's already here, okay? And that change is real, that movement is real. It's not just in imagination, it's not just fiction, it's real. We are imagining something, we are imagining a new reality, we are imagining a conversation. This is actually happening. We are shifting into that reality in that moment. But that doesn't mean that the 3D world is going to follow suit immediately. The 3D world can actually be, as I said, quite dense. It can be quite slow moving. And there's always some sort of a delay. Now, the delay, it doesn't mean that it's going to be months or years or whatever. It could be just minutes. It could be moments. It could be seconds. Some manifestations are instantaneous like that. So the delay might be minimal, but there's also the possibility that the delay might take longer. It might be a few months, for example. So this is why it's so important to keep persisting in what we want, despite of what we see in the 3D world, because there is usually some delay. There is always actually some delay. And knowing that the matter world, the material world moves slowly, at least when it comes to our human senses and how we perceive it, we need to sort of be patient. Patient and persistent at the same time. We persist in knowing that what we want is ours. We persist in revisiting over and over our desired state, our end state. But at the same time, we know that we might not see visible or very obvious movement at once or very, very fast. We might have to wait a little bit to see the movement in the 3D. But like I said, there is always movement. Even if it's so subtle that we can't perceive it with our human senses and with our human mind, it is still there because movement is always instant in the 4D. The minute, the moment we imagine something in the 4D, we've channeled it. That minute, that moment, we've actually shifted into that new reality. So movement is there, movement happens, and it is instant. So that's why we say that there is always movement, because there is. And as we have said in other videos, the 3D is just a reflection of the bigger dimension that is the 4D. So once you have movement in imagination, you have instantaneous movement in the 4D. It's just that the 3D might take a little while to catch up and show it and make it appear. And this is why when you have a shift in imagination, when you start feeling differently within, when, for example, you can hear in imagination your specific person telling you the things that you like to hear, and you start feeling this bliss, this happiness, this excitement, this love within you, you can rest assured that this is actually movement. This is actually movement in the 4D. It is real. It is actually happening. It is instantaneous. And if you persist in it, eventually you're going to see it in the 3D. That's how it works. So that's why we say there is always movement, because there is always movement. Once your imagination moves to a specific place, to a specific space, and you channel certain feelings, a certain reality, a certain story, a certain conversation, certain situation, you are creating it in the 4D, and it's a matter of time for it to come into the 3D if you persist in it, which is why it's so important, so important to persist in what you want to see in your 3D. So with all that said, I'm going to wrap up this video here. I intend that this has helped. As always, I very much appreciate you guys being on this channel, watching this content. I love making this content for you. And as always, I look forward to seeing you all at the next video. And until then, take care and bye-bye.